You're listening to Inside Melbourne, the official podcast of the Melbourne Football Club. Proudly presented by Zurich Insurance, ensuring the things you truly love, like this podcast.
Inside Melbourne, thanks to Zurich, a very special edition of Inside Melbourne because we welcome the CEO, Gary Pert, and the Chairman, Glen Bartlett. Good morning, gentlemen.
Thanks,
Morning,
Glenn.
Glenn. Thanks for having us.
Isolation, it's obviously, you've got a bit of growth there, Glenn. It's treated you well.
Yeah, it has. It's one of my first outings, actually, Glenn, so it's great to be here back at the Melbourne room at the MCG.
Absolutely, good to see you as well. Gary, obviously these have been unprecedented time. That word gets bandied around a lot, but it's been a big few months, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, and I think to see the whole industry impacted in a way I don't think anyone could even imagine. And I think we're all starting to get our head around the fact that we've got through this 8-10 week period, but we're also starting to talk about the fact that this is going to impact the industry, it's going to impact each club for maybe 3, 4, 5 years rather than just the next few months. So you get through that survival stage, but we need to start looking at the future as well.
So Glenn, the past 10 weeks, what have they been like for the football club? How do you think we've sort of handled this challenge?
Yeah, look, as been said, I've been proud of our people, the way it's been handled. It's been a really challenging, uncharted period, uncertainty, but we moved straight into action very early on, set up a crisis working group with John Trotter from the board, myself, Gary and the exec team, meeting very regularly. I'm really proud of our people. In times like this, the leadership that was shown, meetings at all levels, working, collaborating with the AFL, with chairman, CEO meetings, head of footy, finance meetings. Gary and the exec have worked incredibly hard with the board. We set some six guiding principles early on, which I think has really held us in good stead over the last period, focused on really protecting our people, engagement, viability of the club, and still obviously, performance with a season just around the corner. So it has been, a really full-on couple of months. As Gary's indicated, we've still got a lot of hard work in front of us, in the next few years to come.
In terms of where the club sits overall, the AFL, as I understand, have an assisted category and an unassisted category for its clubs.
Yeah.
Our members want to know, what category does Melbourne fall into?
Yeah, look, I mentioned working with the AFL. At the outset, I'd say we've looking at somewhere between a $6 and a $10 million hole, not just this year, but in years to come. And difficult to be more certain than that because of there's various assumptions made, but that's the order of the hole. So in terms of cash flow, we would either need to go and increase our debt again, which we've worked very hard over the last few years to reduce from 8.2 mil to 2 mil, and with a range of other things off the field. So being an assisted club really means some financial assistance with the AFL, working closely with them, accountability, in terms of, particularly on the admin side, we might see some restrictions in terms of expenditure as well going forward on that admin side. Under the letter of arrangement, clubs can flip between assisted and non-assisted, but with that kind of hole, which could be $10 million, clearly we'll need some cash flow assistance, and we're working hand in hand with the AFL and being accountable to the AFL in that regard. But it has no impact on the fixture or footy department or any competitive advantage issues. It's around really accountability and finances.
Gary, if I can bring you in here, Glenn has just mentioned that we will be an assisted club, obviously. Talk about this financial loss in 2020. Where will it be? How many years exactly will it take, do you think, for the club to recover?
Yeah, and Glenn talked about a range of $6 to $10 million, and it's a big range, and because there's so many uncertainties. So if I look at this year, I would suggest that it's going to be around about a $6 million impact, which is substantial. There's still some variables in there in terms of whether clubs are going to get any sort of gate receipt from the AFL, now that we know that the games are going to play out. We still might be impacted by members' responses, whether they continue to sign up or some are wanting compensation. So there's some still big variables in the mix. But I think, as I said earlier, we're starting to see that the impact is going to be long term. We're not going to get through this close down and then once the games start, we're all through it. Quite the opposite. Big factors like the world economy are going to affect the clubs for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Our sponsors who have been amazing and so loyal and work with us so closely, but they're experiencing the same challenges. A lot of our sponsors, whether it's Zurich or Hertz or Jaguar, they're big international companies and brands, and they're having to stand down staff. They're having to deal with the challenges of loss of cash flow overnight like we did. And these are things that aren't going to change in the short term. So our sponsorship for the next few years is going to affect the whole sporting industry as it will the economy. Other variables, I think one of the key elements of any club, if you want to create the highest level of stability, it's going to be able to perform on field. So that's a big concentration for us. Make sure that we're playing in finals, we're playing great style of football and standard of football, so people are wanting to watch us on telly, and then when the crowds are allowed to come back, we want to make sure Melbourne supporters are just chafing at the bit to want to come back and build those crowd numbers up, because we're seeing how important that is.
And I want to touch on that because among the factors that will drive the financial rebuild, the members, I would dare say, are going to be a major part of this.
Yeah, I think it's members and supporters. The one thing we're seeing very starkly at the moment is the fact that we looked at supporters as nearly someone that come along to view the event. And now we're seeing that the supporters are part of the event. When there's 50, 60, maybe 90,000 people at a game, it's a whole different game. And when we see that stark reality of no crowds, it's nowhere near the product that we all love. So the supporters are really important, but membership is a key. Our business model in Australia with AFL football is a members-owned club. We don't have billionaire private owners like in the UK and America. We rely on our members. So the clubs with the biggest, most secure and stable membership, they're going to weather this over the next few years. Our members have been so loyal and have been amazing, but we sit in a realm of around somewhere between 40 and 50,000 members, and we're seeing clubs in the 80, 90, getting to 100,000. That's a big impact on your business model, your stability, whether you're going to be needing assistance from the AFL or not. So we thank our members who have been amazingly loyal this year, but we hope they continue with that loyalty. 10,000 members from last year still haven't signed up. We'd love to see those guys jump on board, even if it's to buy a non-access membership. Our players regularly ask, how are the supporters and members handling this? And they love it when we say that they're staying loyal, they're being so positive. We've had far more calls from supporters and members saying, how do I help, than we have saying, I've got a problem. They've been quite amazing. Speaking
about our members and supporters, we asked members, supporters to submit some questions to both of you, to Gary, to Glen. Sam Marnie asks, we have touched on it slightly, but how severely has the shutdown affected the club's financial position? Also from a staff base, you preside over a big staff base, Gary. It must have been a tough few months in that regard.
Yeah, it's really tough, and we've seen this. We're not any different to the majority of organisations in Australia, but we had the year set up. We were coming into the first game. There was amazing energy and anticipation. We had really high hopes for this year, and just literally while we're on the bus to our first game, our players started to see through their phones that Gillon McLachlan had basically shut down the competition. That's within an hour or so of us playing our first game, and then it was a major shift. It was the most difficult time I can remember as a CEO, having to stand down staff. We know as a reality the industry, we're not going to come through this with the same amount probably of players, coaches, staff, administration, and that's really difficult to deal with. And everyone's been so amazing in how they've worked with the club and instantly responded. But clubs are such a tight unit, and there's so much connection that I think in a lot of ways it actually makes it even harder. And like I said, I couldn't thank the staff any more than the way that they overnight responded and adapted to the circumstances that were thrust upon us.
A raft of questions here from our members in regards to facilities, a combination of questions around Amy Park versus Casey Fields. So when this pandemic hit, the club left quickly to Casey. A few questions here. Why did we leave, and what's the benefit of Casey Fields, and when will we be getting back to Amy Park?
So it was sudden. As soon as we got advised of the close down of the competition, the players literally had 24 hours to clean out their lockers, and we relocated to Casey Fields. Now, our facilities out there are set up for, ad hoc training, so it wasn't perfectly set up for us to move out there, and we're really building ourselves out a home there in terms of making it look and feel like the club. But the reality is at Amy, Melbourne Storm, Melbourne Victory, Melbourne Rebels, it's a club where we have shared facilities, shared gym, shared pool, aquatic, all the facilities including the cafeteria. So we couldn't guarantee the health and safety of our players and staff in that shared facility environment. So overnight we relocated. We wouldn't have met the AFL's minimum guidelines in terms of that health and safety unless we were able to go to an area where we could quarantine. So out at Casey, that's what's set up. We can quarantine it off. We've got different sections of the facilities out there to cater for the smaller groups coming through. So we're making do with the facilities as we develop them there, but the players are loving the bigger ground. So they've come back, and you've got an MCG size ground out there, and the training sessions they've been able to do. They've got that space equivalent to the way they play the game at the MCG. So there's an upside of that, and they're quite enjoying that.
I dare say it'll be that result for all of 2020.
Well, again, it comes back to the fact that we need to provide an area that we can contain and is the health and safety minimum standards are met, and that we can't in the foreseeable future deliver that at Amy. We're working with the MOPT, but it could be, it'll definitely be all this season. It could be a big part of next year before we come back to Amy and reinstate our program there.
Another question, this one from Caitlin. Thanks for the questions, by the way. Great to see our members interacting. Perty, you presented the strategic plan at the AGM. In what ways the recent structure to the competition going to impact on that strategic plan?
Well, it's a really good question, and it's sort of something I've been thinking about a lot. Some areas won't be affected at all and shouldn't be affected. So a big part of that strategic plan was the fact that we committed to be playing in finals for the next 4 years. Our women's team and our men's team, and as you know, the women made the finals. So disappointed to have that closed down when we had such momentum. But our men's program, we've still got the same ambition, so there's no reason why that should change. We've got less games, but we expect to be playing a style and quality of football where we can make the finals, and that's a big part of it. Membership. We've dropped off in membership this year like most clubs would have, but over that 4-year period, if we're making the finals and playing good footy and we're able to win a premiership during that 4-year period, I still think we're capable to get to 75,000 members, so that's still in the mix. Delivering average crowds of 50,000 people, again, it's not going to happen this year, but over the next few years, if we're playing a really good style of football, you're a Melbourne supporter. You've seen 80, 90,000 people roll up when we've got our act together, and they can really bring a new energy to our team. So tick for that. And in a lot of ways, the facilities, we've committed to finish the development of the facilities at Casey Fields, which in the next 4 years we're halfway through that, 2/3 of the way through that, and I think, again, that'll happen. And the Melbourne-based home base that we've still got our working party with MOPT, the Melbourne Footy Club, the AFL, and working towards an outcome. Now, I've got to be honest, over the last 8 to 10 weeks, we've been in survival mode. So we haven't thought a lot about that, and I would suggest the state government's in the same boat. But we'll reinstate that as soon as we find our feet, the games start, and we can take a breath. but there's no reason why we should change our vision or ambitions around that. The only area we've taken a really big hit is this area of the financials. And, you know, a hit of $10 million for the Melbourne Footy Club over the next few years means we're going to have to reshape our business model. So we set to be debt-free, and we would have been at the end of this year. And we wanted to have a balance sheet of over $30 million, and that's taken a hit. So we're in the process of bringing down our costs as a club in the footy department and in admin, and really focusing on our core business more than we ever have. But we are going to rely on the support of our members, our supporters and our sponsors. But the only one that I see has been impacted by that is the financial side of things. Everything else, I think, holds up.
Thanks to our co-principal partner and podcast sponsor, Zurich Insurance. For over 100 years, they've been insuring the people and things you truly love. And just like you, they truly love footy and they truly love the D's.
Glenn, if I can bring you back in here, it's a crazy world we live in, we continue to live in, and this is going to be a very different looking season, no doubt. What do you as a board and a chairman do to maintain this momentum in the off-season? Because we did create a great buzz in the off-season and make sure that there's a strong performance this season.
Yeah, look, Clint, there's a very strong off-season. We've worked really hard. I mean, unity is one of our core values. So at the AGM, we rolled out our club core values of trust, respect, unity and excellence. We're certainly all in this together. Pert mentioned our membership, and our partners, corporate partners, have been fantastic, unbelievable support. But we've still got, I think it's about 13,000 members that haven't signed up. So if they're able to sign up, we really as a board need you to sign up. Supporters out there, please get behind the club. One of our values of excellence, we've made it very clear from a board that COVID-19 is no excuse right across the club for not striving for excellence. We need to challenge each other, push each other. We're in this together. I'm confident we'll come out the other side closer. We need to perform on the field. We need to do our very best off the field. Everyone across the club, Pert, the exec, the whole board, staff are working incredibly hard. It's been a really difficult, period. Made some really hard decisions, as Pert has said. We'll need to further reshape our club. We've got a lot of hard work in front of us, but we really need our corporate partners and our supporters, members right behind us. And so please, if you haven't signed up yet, please sign up.
Part of what Pert was talking to just before, and I want to get your opinion on this, there's been some heartbreaking cuts, obviously. How are the Melbourne people faring? Because it does break your heart watching from a distance, and society's indeed impacted in all ways, shapes and forms, not just football clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. So many people out there have been affected, and our supporters and members, and it's been really hard. One of the guiding principles, is to protect our people and look after our people to the best extent we can. They are our most important asset. They are what make the club, our staff, but our members and supporters as well. It's been a really tough period, and some of the conversations, leadership across the club, from our head coach, head of footy, Purdy, the conversations they've had to have, our club leaders. I'm really proud as a president the way they've stood up. I think leadership really comes to the fore when you face a crisis like we're facing. Going forward, we have to keep driving the course, staying the course. As Purdy said, our strategic plan remains the same. On facilities, that's still number one priority. Obviously, the last 2 or 3 months, COVID-19's overtaken everything out there, but we've set up a working party within our club some time ago. We've got a joint working party with Vic Government, MAPT, AFL. Some great work being done there for a home within the MCG precinct. That commitment's still there, hasn't changed, but obviously COVID-19 has produced a number of other critical challenges at the moment. I'm excited about what's in front of us. I believe we'll come through a much stronger club, different, but much stronger. We're in this together and we're unified.
Fixturing, especially in 2020, obviously it looks very different all of a sudden, because we went from having an Anzac Eve match, a Queen's birthday match, and we don't have them this year. That'll no doubt impact on the balance sheet, as will most things. Are there any discussions, Ashley Hinson wants to know, again off the socials, with the AFL about banking them for next year, shifting them to next year? A question for both of you in regards to those showpieces.
Oh, look, the AFL obviously set the fixture. I know, very focused on equity, and it's a difficult job, but certainly, those games, the blockbuster games that teams don't get this year because there's no crowds. We're hoping common sense will prevail, and those teams will host those games that would have happened this year, essentially. There's other aspects of the fixture, but the blockbusters like Anzac Eve, Queen's Birthday, we would hope that equity and fairness would prevail, and we'd be hosting those games in 2021.
For clarification, Danny wants to know, again off the socials, the new fixture has us only playing one home game in the first 5. Why is this? Is this a bit of a quirk of this sort of rolling fixture, and what does it mean for the club?
Yeah, the AFL's been right up front about the fixture. When they were creating the new fixture, because there's so many complexities in it, they just said to all of the clubs, you just need to be totally flexible in how it's going to roll out. And in our first few rounds, yes, we've got one home game. By the time the fixture finishes up, that'll balance itself out. So we'll have a run of quite a few home games in a row. Makes no difference. It's interesting. There's a lot of discussion and debate, probably in the media and maybe with supporters, about the fixture. Internally, if you were to talk to Goody and the players, the fixture, how balanced it is, or whether you're having to travel or who you're playing next week, is a bit irrelevant. It's a bit cliche, but it's the reality. With the footy departments, they look at it and go, what can we control? How fit are we? How prepared are we? How well have we recovered our players from injury, and we're ready to compete? And that's all their focus is. So that'll balance itself out. But from a club perspective, we're just happy with whatever sequence it is, whoever we're playing. It is a bit different from what we entered into the season with, but it's irrelevant at this point. We're excited just to be starting the competition.
Geelong at the MCG, though, that was a nice little quirk. I enjoyed that one. Another one from Daniel to you, Purdy. What's going on with the VFL? Our non-playing players, what are they going to be doing, given they can't be playing at VFL level?
Right, so it's important to understand that the AFL has said that the AFL listed players can't play in the VFL, obviously because that's part of the containment. So they're training with the senior list. When it comes to the VFL competition playing in clubs like Melbourne with the Casey Demons, when we looked at the financial models of the club, and like I said, we're in survival mode, the budgets were pulled out of the clubs to be playing that VFL competition. So there is a working party on what might happen this year, and it might get to a point where financially and practically that's not able. We'd love to see the competition to continue in some form. But in terms of the AFL listed players, also as the season goes on, while they're training with the group, it'd be great if we had the opportunity to play some games. And again, the AFL's working on this as well, but a listed player that's not playing in the main game every weekend, if there'll be a reduced number, even if we're playing competitive training sessions with another club, we just want to make sure that the players are fit and prepared to come in and compete when they're required. And sometimes just doing the training, that's not going to be enough. So we're still waiting for that working party to present on what will happen to the VFL competition and our AFL listed players who aren't playing in the main game each week.
And again, the AFL is obviously piecing together a giant jigsaw puzzle, and the pieces are very slowly falling into place, as is the nature of this pandemic. Do we know yet what impact it will have on the AFLW competition? That's a question from David.
Yeah, so AFLW competition, really part of this important part of the club and the culture. We were so proud of the girls, the way they played. last year, made the final, so excited, ready to go, and then the AFL pulled the competition for the obvious reasons. But we don't see that there being any cuts in budgets or the program. There may not be any extra investment, so maybe there won't be any new teams coming in, but we expect that AFLW competition to start up, pre-season start, and prepare for the competition as in a normal year.
There's a few good haircuts as well. I mean, the captain leading by example in that department. Did you like the blonde, Glenn?
Oh, look, I love Max. I love his leadership, what he stands for, and look, we're right behind him. I mean, everyone's unique, different. Everyone's got their own story, but he's a great leader for this football club, and what can I say?
Yeah, I told him the other day it looks good, but I won't be doing it myself.
Yeah, but you know what? As a club, we look at it and go, Maxi could not be a better ambassador and leader for this club.
Of course.
You know, like, he's been amazing. The players love him. He's a great combination there with Jack, and the combination of those guys and what they're doing to the program and what they do for the whole club, because, you know, Maxi is an ambassador and leader of the whole club, and you couldn't vote it. To be quite honest, I don't even notice the haircut. All I notice is the great work that he's doing, and you know, he'll continue to drive things forward this year.
One of my favourite questions is from Brian. He says, I'm sticking by the club and won't be asking for a refund, but how do I get my scarf?
Yes, well, that's the number one question and call we're receiving through membership. And normally, obviously, people used to come to the game, and before the first game, they could pick up their scarf, and that's not a possibility now with no game access. But what we will be doing is we'll put up a series of sites where our members can pick that up before the next game. So there'll be the obvious one of our merchandise shop at the MCG. A lot of people aren't working in the city at the moment, so we're going to set up sites, and without going through all the addresses, we'll be using our network of sponsors as well. So we're going to be asking Jaguar, Hertz to help us with some of those locations, and they'll be in the suburbs. People will come and collect their scarf.
It's a great idea. Judith asks, what do you want from us fans this year? How can we feel part of the D's plan for success in 2020 rather than just looking on? Glenn?
Oh, look, continue to engage like they are right now, and with questions, a great question. Continue to barricade, support. We're hoping, we don't know what's going to happen, but we hope at some point this year there'll be crowds back. Obviously, that's a complex issue in itself. We can't bank on that, but stick with us. If, as I've said, if you've got friends as a supporter who support Melbourne that aren't members, get them to please sign up if they can. Even if it's a non-access game membership, it all helps us. So keep believing. We're steering the course. We haven't lost, as Gary went through, our vision and the various strategic goals we've got. We haven't lost sight of that. We're in this together, working incredibly hard for your club. If you can, shout for us at home. Engage with us when you can. That we're going to be focused on that. We really appreciate that, and we love the support of all of our supporters.
And the support of the podcast too, because they've been engaging with the players over the past few weeks on this podcast, Inside Melbourne. And the last question of the day comes from Bruce. He asks to you, Perty, what are we doing to ensure that staffing cuts, both in admin and footy, don't negatively affect the performance culture of the club that's on and off the field?
Yeah, and I think one of the things is we're dealing, again, with all organisations are dealing with the same challenges at the moment, and the energy's been up really high. We've been doing a lot of work with these Zoom calls and connection links. We've had project groups, even within the football department. We've had groups of the players and coaches working on what are the next ideas, what are the best clubs around the world, what are they doing, what's something that under the circumstances we can do differently next year. So we're keeping the group connected and stimulated in the thinking. One of the great things when you talk to Glenn about what we want from supporters or anyone around the club, I guarantee the AFL industry and the clubs will be forced to find innovation and change out of this. We'll become better because we have to. And in some ways it'll be because we're going to have to do more with less, and others it'll just be because our aspirations are so high that regardless of the challenges, we want to find ways to just continually get better. So we've been doing a lot of work as a club in that space, but and sometimes a lot of the connection points are just to have fun. So some of the Zoom calls or the connection points and the conversations have just been fun link-ups, and I think most of the organisations are doing the same thing. But footy clubs are a special place. Melbourne's a special place. It's got a great energy, it's got a magnificent culture, and we're doing everything possible to maintain that even when we're not face to face, because there will be a time when we're back together and we're playing games and the club's physically and geographically connected back again. We want to make sure that not only we don't lose momentum, that we've helped grow some more during that period of time, and I think that's possible.
Gary, thank you. Final one to you, Glenn, before we say goodbye. What are you looking forward to? Footies Reboot, and what's your message to Melbourne members and supporters?
Can't wait for the reboot. I know our players and coaches have worked incredibly hard over the summer and the last few months. So to get footy back on and get behind our boys, and can't wait for that. Look, as Perty said, I mean, working closely together, we're in this together. It's a challenging time. We don't know exactly what's in front of us, but we're not losing sight. We want to be a club of no excuses. We want to be a club that lives by our values. The guiding principles we set, I think, have held us in good stead. Our people are number one, both in our staff, our players, everyone within the club, but our membership and supporters as well. We absolutely, people are our most important asset. Please stay safe. Please get behind the Ds. Can't wait for 2020. There's still a premiership. It's a very important year for us, and can't wait for the action to reboot. First against Carlton, and then let's go from there.
Glen, Gary, thanks for your time. Thanks also for your leadership through this crisis and for helping to steer the club through it. That's it from the Inside Melbourne team. We hope you've enjoyed the insight. Until next time, it's goodbye.